My parents begged me to come to them for the holiday. After a 6-hour flight I came and they opened the door and said, "You will babysit your sister's children. We are going on family trip." Then my sister said laughing, "Don't wipe your snot on him, kids." They laughed, until I shocked them with my statement. My sister screamed, my parents going crazy and my mom begged, but then I was half asleep when my phone rang at 6 a.m., and seeing my parents on the screen made my stomach turn. It's never just a "how are you" call with them. I hesitated for a second, then picked up. They got right to the point asking if I could come to Seattle for the holidays. They said the whole family would be together this year, and it would mean a lot to them. Their voices were even a little softer than usual. Against my better judgment, I said yes. I booked a flight from Miami, dropped everything at work, and even bought some gifts for the kids. It cost me a stupid amount of money, not only for the flight, but also for the rental car I figured I'd need, even though they'd said not to bother. I wanted to be prepared. I always do. It's just who I am, or maybe it's who they trained me to be, the one who takes care of things. The snow hit me the second I stepped out of SeaTac. The wet, heavy kind that makes you regret everything. The Uber ride to her apartment felt longer than the flight. I stared out the window, half expecting something to go wrong. It was the same neighborhood I grew up in, the same house, though now it felt more like a place I made possible than a home. They lived in it, but I paid for it. Mortgage, electricity, internet. My sister Hanan had a real job in over a year, and my parents always had an excuse for why their pension or retirement wasn't enough. As I walked up the stairs, I half expected some kind of welcome. I don't know why. Maybe a smile, maybe even a thank you. My parents opened the door, looked at me, then said it without hesitation. "You're going to babysit your sister's kids. We're going on a family vacation." I just stood there. No hey, no hug, not even a damn hello. Then my sister appeared, holding a duffel bag and looking way too excited for someone about to drop off her kids. The two little ones were already in their coats, trampling snow all over the entryway. She smiled and said with a laugh, "Don't wipe your snot on it, kids." They all started laughing. My mom joined in from the kitchen like it was a sitcom moment. They thought it was hilarious. And that's when I said it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I just laid it out. Every single thing I'd done for them. Every bill I had paid. Every time I'd covered my sister's credit card debt. Every lie I told my own landlord just to get them money for food. Then I told them something they hadn't seen coming. The one thing I'd been sitting on for months. The detail that turned their little plan upside down. That's when my sister started screaming. My parents lost their temper so fast they actually knocked over the coat rack. My mom started begging, hands in the air, as if she could undo the last 5 years in an instant. But I was done. They dragged me across the country thinking I'd be their free babysitter while they went on vacation. What they didn't realize was that Seattle was exactly where I needed to be to ruin their plans. And that was just the beginning. The thing about people like my family is that they always assume you'll cave in eventually. My sister could already taste the mountain view from her resort room. My mother had probably packed 10 scarves and no underwear. And my parents, they just wanted to disappear for a week and pretend their failures were someone else's fault. So when I told them I wasn't staying to watch the kids, I don't think it registered right away. It was like a glitch in their heads. They just stood there blinking, waiting for me to say I was joking. I wasn't. I didn't come to babysit. I came to watch it all fall apart. I told them their reservation at the resort was gone. Cancelled 3 days ago. Fully refunded on the credit card that, surprise, I'd paid for them a few months ago. They hadn't noticed because they stopped opening their own statements years ago. At first my sister laughed, as if she thought I was bluffing. Then she pulled up the resort's app. She turned pale. Her hands started to shake. My mom looked over her shoulder, blinked a few times, then started asking questions that no one could answer. Then came the airline part. I told them the flights had been rerouted. No refunds, that would have been too easy. I had the credit transferred to my own name under an account I'd opened months ago, planning for this. My parents screamed something about fraud. I reminded them that it wasn't fraud if the card was in my name. All those upgrades and bills, they hadn't paid anything in a year. The whole house, their groceries, my sister's car payment, it all went through me. They just signed their name and took the credit. But the highlight was what I put on the table next. It wasn't a fancy envelope or anything. Just a folded letter from the bank. A polite reminder that the automatic mortgage payments had been stopped. No threats, no ultimatums, just a let's catch up soon kind of tone. 3 weeks ago, I stopped reporting on the house. I wanted to see how long it would take them to notice. Spoiler, they didn't. Now my sister was walking in circles, trying to call the resort, probably hoping someone would reverse the cancellation. My mom asked me how I could be so cruel after everything they'd done for me. That was the part that made me laugh. They really thought they'd done something for me. Then the doorbell rang. Everyone stopped. They weren't expecting anyone. I was. I'd planned this to the hour. I told them to relax. It wasn't the bank. Not yet. My parents opened the door and in walked a tall woman in her mid-40s with a clipboard and a badge around her neck. She introduced herself as Erin from Child Protective Services. My sister's face drained of all color. You see, I'd called 3 weeks ago. Told her what I'd seen during our last Zoom call. The kids left alone in the backyard without coats, one of them crying, while my sister smoked on the porch and scrolled through her phone. I had screenshots, dates, times. CPS had opened a silent file. Nothing serious at first. But they were required to follow up. And now they were here for a home visit. I gave Erin a polite smile and told her I was the uncle in town for the holidays. Thought she might like to see the kitchen, the refrigerator, the nursery. My sister didn't say a word. She just stood there, frozen, clutching her useless plane tickets. It was the first time I'd seen her speechless in years. And we hadn't even gotten to the good part. The woman from CPS came in with calm authority, and I made it a point not to say too much. I didn't need to. The house spoke for itself. The kitchen sink was piled high with dishes. There were empty wine bottles on the counter. One of the kids had smeared peanut butter on the wall by the dining room table. And when Erin asked to see the nursery, I stepped aside and let her see for herself. My sister tried to throw the switch. Suddenly she was the concerned mother. Said she hadn't had time to clean up because they were packing. Said she always left detailed instructions and would never go on vacation without making sure her babies were safe. Said I'd agreed to everything. I didn't react. I just looked at Erin. She asked me if I had any messages or texts from my sister confirming that I would be watching the kids. I pulled out my cell phone and handed it to her. My sister's last message was from 2 days ago. Can you pick up some shampoo from Miami? The kind you bought me last time. Nothing about babysitting. Nothing about consent. Just a free ride, as usual. My parents jumped in, tried to spin it as a misunderstanding. Said I had always helped the family, that this was no different. They said they were just under a lot of stress. Financial problems, health issues, mental burnout. All the greatest hits. I told Erin that I paid their mortgage, their bills, even their grocery delivery. I pulled up the banking app and showed her 3 years of transfers, 5-figure support every month. She nodded, scribbled something down, and went upstairs to check on the kids, who were playing in the room with a tablet and a bag of chips. When she was out of earshot, my mother finally snapped. She asked me what this was really about. Was I trying to destroy the family because of some hurt feelings? If I felt undervalued? I looked her in the eye and asked if it ever occurred to her that maybe I had no problem helping, but I had a problem being used. That maybe it wasn't about the money. Maybe it was that the second I walked through that door, they made it clear that I was just a tool. That they didn't fly me across the country to see me, they flew me here to disappear while they played family somewhere else. They all went silent. I told them this wasn't revenge for one weekend. It was for years of being the fire escape of their lives. Years of dropped calls, ignored birthdays, and disappearing acts only to show up when they needed a check or a favor. I told them I'd already contacted the mortgage company. They'd be getting a letter soon, not just a warning, but a reassessment of the property. I would take my name off the account. If they wanted to keep the house, they'd have to qualify on their own. Spoiler, they wouldn't. I told them that the car I co-signed for my sister would be repossessed at the end of the month. She'd already missed 2 payments. I just hadn't reported it until this morning. I told them the utilities would be shut off in a week if they didn't update the billing information. They stood there like puppets. And then I told them something I hadn't planned to say. That this wasn't the only house I was supporting. That the real reason I'd come to Seattle was to buy a house. Not theirs. Mine. A condo downtown. Fully paid for. I hadn't told them because I knew what they'd do, turn it into a new branch of their leech operation. But it was mine, and I moved in that night. Then Erin came back downstairs and gave them a checklist of what needed to be fixed. She said this visit was a warning. But she'd be back. And if things didn't change, they'd have to deal with more than canceled vacations. She left. I picked up my suitcase, finally moved it out of the doorway. They didn't stop me. Not one of them asked me to stay. Got it, you're right. Let's make this right. After everything blew up after CPS walked out the front door and left them standing in the rubble of their own mess, I figured I'd sleep there 2 nights at the most. My place wasn't fully furnished yet. I had furniture coming in 2 days. I still had to stock the fridge, pick up a few things, maybe unpack properly. But I wasn't in a hurry. For once, I thought I could take my time. When things started to settle down, I looked at my parents and said, "So I'm staying with you for 2 days until I get back to my place." I said it like any normal person would. Not smug, not sarcastic. Just a statement. And they looked at me as if I'd insulted them personally. This time they didn't raise their voices. They just said no. Said I wasn't welcome there anymore. That I'd humiliated them. That if I thought I was better than them now, I could prove it from somewhere else. I looked over at my mother. She didn't say a word. My sister was still hiding with the children. It was exactly what it looked like. They'd used me for as long as they could. And now that I wasn't playing along, I was disposable. So I nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't say another word. I picked up my suitcase, barely unzipped, and walked out. No dramatic exit. No big speech. Just a man leaving a house that no longer belonged to him. I drove to my new apartment, the one they didn't even know existed. A one-bedroom downtown condo, 10th floor, clean, minimal, fully paid for. I'd been planning this move for over a year. Quietly, while I was still wiring money and pretending I didn't care. The place still smelled the fresh paint. The floors were cold, the fridge was empty, and there were no sheets on the bed. But it was mine. Nobody had the keys but me. I put my suitcase in the closet and just stood there for a moment, hearing nothing. No TV blaring, no kids screaming, no one asking for a ride or a favor or a loan. For the first time in years, I wasn't responsible for anyone but myself. The next morning, I made coffee and sat by the window watching the traffic below. I didn't expect anybody to reach out. I thought they'd double down, spend the week telling each other I'd lost it, that I was selfish. But around 11 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from my sister. She asked if she could come over alone. Said she wanted to talk. Said she wasn't coming to fight. Said she wanted to apologize. And for some reason, I said sure. A few minutes later, she texted again. I'm not trying to fight. I just want to say what I should have said a long time ago. Please. 5 minutes. I waited. Let her sit with it. Then I sent the address. About an hour later, I saw her through the window, standing outside the building in a gray hoodie, arms crossed, clearly unsure whether to knock or leave. She looked different. Smaller somehow. No makeup, no phone in hand, no kids climbing on her. Just her. The version of her I remembered before everything turned into a mess of entitlement and excuses. I let her in. As she walked into the apartment, she paused for a second, as if she'd stepped into someone else's life. She looked around bare walls, new couch, still some unpacked boxes stacked neatly in a corner. This is really nice, she said, as if surprised that I built something clean and quiet for myself. I didn't answer. I went to the kitchen, poured 2 coffees, and handed her one. She took it and sat down, as if waiting to be told what to do. That was a first. She didn't waste any time. No dramatic build-up. She started with the apology. She said she was sorry for everything, for the way they planned to dump the kids on me, for acting like I wasn't doing enough already, for every time she texted me asking for money like it was nothing. She even apologized for the way she laughed when I walked in the door. That moment apparently stuck with her. She admitted that they got used to me fixing things, that our parents expected it, that she expected it. She said it felt normal until I stopped playing along. And then things got ugly. I just listened. When she was done, I told her I appreciated it. That I needed to hear that. But I also told her that I couldn't pretend it hadn't happened, that apologizing wouldn't fix anything unless she really changed. She nodded, said she understood. She said she wasn't going back to the house that night. She and the kids were staying in a hotel for now. She said she was thinking about getting her own place. She sounded serious. I told her she should. Before she left, she thanked me. No hugs, no fake closeness. She just walked out, more quiet than I'd ever seen her. I stood by the window and watched her go. And for a second, I thought maybe something had changed. But around 7:30 that night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then the voicemail popped up. It was my parents. Their voices were deep. Cold. If you think this is over, you're dumber than we thought. You want to embarrass this family? You'll see how that feels. I stood there and listened to it twice. They weren't going to let it go. The guilt, the money, the free labor, it wasn't enough that I had walked away. Now, they wanted to take something back. Make me pay for stepping out of line. And that was when I realized they were up to something. And it wasn't just petty revenge. They wanted to take me down with them. The voicemail confirmed what I already knew. My parents weren't going to take the loss quietly. That's always been their role, to soften the blow after they delivered it, to make it seem like there was still some warmth in the house that ran on control. I didn't respond. I didn't call back. I just opened the envelope I'd been saving for the right moment. Inside were copies of documents, every wire transfer, every utility payment, every credit card payment I'd made on their behalf. Each one stapled with dates and account numbers. I'd printed them out weeks ago and kept them in a folder labeled, Reclaim. Not for legal reasons. Not yet. But because I knew that people like these only understood one thing, proof. The next morning, I paid a visit to the mortgage lender. I had stopped making payments weeks ago, but now I made it official. I signed a form removing my name from everything associated with the house. I didn't want it repossessed. I wanted them to own it. All of it. The late payments. The rising interest. The phone calls. The wait. I walked out with a grin I hadn't worn in years. Back at my apartment, I took another step. The quietest, but the sharpest. I logged into my bank account and reversed 3 scheduled transfers, one for groceries, one for their phone plan, and one for my sister's car insurance, all canceled with 2 clicks. Let them feel it. I was sipping coffee when my mother texted a long, rambling message about how families shouldn't be transactional and how cutting people off is not love. I didn't reply. Then came the group text her, my parents and my sister. They tried to turn the narrative around. Said I'd betrayed them. That they had sacrificed everything for me growing up. That now I was punishing them for a misunderstanding. But they didn't expect what came next. The final surprise. The reason I had no intention of ever setting foot in their house again. 3 months ago, I had quietly filed a report with a government housing program. Nothing dramatic, just a request to review how financial assistance was being used in multi-adult households with dependent children. I included copies of the bills I'd paid. Proof of how my money was being used to subsidize their lives while the children were neglected, sometimes left alone, sometimes shuffled off with barely a goodbye. That triggered an internal audit. And yesterday, while they were still arguing about who should call me first, they received a letter. A formal review of their eligibility for child support programs, housing assistance and disability benefits. A letter that started with, "We regret to inform you," and ended with, "Subject to investigation." My sister texted me at 10:23 p.m. with one word. Why? I ignored her. Because they brought me across the country to babysit their mess. And all I did was give it back to them, one piece at a time. By the December, I hadn't heard from them in days. No texts, no calls. My sister had stopped reaching out. The silence was a new tactic, a temporary retreat, while they figured out what angle to come at me from next. I didn't let it distract me. I was finishing unpacking when a knock came at my apartment door. It was unexpected. Quiet. Not banging or aggressive, just deliberate. I opened it, half expecting to see my sister again. But it was my mother. She was standing there in a heavy coat, hands in her sleeves, eyes red as if she'd been crying. But not the kind of crying you do when you're hurt. The kind you do when you've run out of ways to win. She asked if she could come in. I let her. She didn't sit down. She didn't touch anything. She just stood by the window, looking out at the city, like she needed to see something steady. She said they got the letter, the official one. That the benefits review was underway. That my sister's car had been repossessed that morning. That my parents had spent the last 2 days calling old friends, trying to find someone willing to lend them money. No one had it. She said she came alone because she knew my father would only escalate things if he was there. That they were angry, not because I turned my back on them but because I'd done it cleanly. No screaming, no chaos. Just a quiet, complete exit. Then she asked the question I wasn't expecting. What do we do now? Not, how could you? Not, you ruined us. Just that. I told her the truth. I said, you start over. You live within your means. You stop treating people like safety nets. And if you ever want me back in your life, it will be as a person, not a solution. She nodded once. Then she handed me a small envelope. No return address. Inside was a check, a real one. Not for everything, but for part of what they owed me. She said it was all they had for now, and they'd send more when they could. I didn't say anything. I just put it on the counter. She left without apologizing. Just a gentle, take care, and she was gone. I never saw my parents again. My sister stayed out of touch for 3 months. Then one day she emailed me a photo of the kids standing in front of a small apartment building, holding a set of keys. A new beginning. She didn't ask for anything. She just wrote, "Thank you even if you hate me." I didn't answer right away. I gave it a few weeks. Then I sent back a photo of the city skyline from my window with a single line. No hate. Just boundaries. And that was it. The end of a cycle. The beginning of something cleaner. Not everyone gets closure. But I got distance. And sometimes that's stronger. Mini update, 1 month later. It's been a little over a month since everything ended, or maybe I should say since it finally began. Life is quieter now. The apartment feels lived in. My things are where I want them. My fridge isn't empty. And I wake up without that gnawing fear in my chest, the one that used to come when I saw their names on my phone. Last week I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name and handwriting I recognized right away. My mom. Inside was another check, small but steady. And a note that simply said, "We're doing all we can." I didn't cash the first one. Or this one. Not yet. I'm waiting to see if the effort continues, if it's real or just a temporary guilt spasm. I'm not bitter, just cautious. My sister has kept her word. She's working now part-time at a daycare center, which makes sense. She sent another photo. Her kids are smiling in a real living room. A rug, a couch, coloring books spread out. No chaos. No tension behind their eyes like before. We didn't talk directly. Just short messages, quiet updates. That's all I want right now. Peace, not reunion. As for my parents, nothing. Not a text, not a whisper. And honestly, I don't expect one. People like them don't apologize. They wait for the world to bend back to them. I don't bend. A strange thing happened last night. I found myself laughing. Not at a show or a meme, just nothing. I was sitting there, sipping tea, watching snow fall from my 10th floor window, and I laughed. Because I wasn't waiting for the next catastrophe. It was just quiet. And after all, that kind of silence is worth more than any apology. 6 months later, I got a job offer in Boston. Better pay, better position. I took it without hesitation. The morning I was packing up my Seattle condo to move east, I heard a knock at the door. It was my sister with her kids. They looked healthy, rested. The children hugged my legs without being told to, genuine affection instead of obligation. My sister handed me a small package wrapped in newspaper. "We wanted to give you this before you left," she said, her voice steady. The kids picked it out. Inside was a simple keychain with a small silver compass attached. No engraving, no sentimental message. Just a compass. "So you always know which way is home," my sister said. "Even if home isn't us anymore." I didn't cry. Neither did she. But I put the keychain in my pocket and thanked them. She didn't ask for money. She didn't mention our parents. She just wished me luck and left with the kids waving goodbye. 3 weeks later, settled in my new place in Boston, I got an email from my mother. No dramatic declarations, no guilt trips. Just a short note saying they were selling the house, downsizing to something they could actually afford. She attached a photo of a modest apartment building. "Starting over," was all she wrote. I never replied. But that night I hung the compass keychain on my new key ring. Not because I was ready to go back, but because I was finally ready to move forward without the weight of their expectations. Sometimes the best closure isn't a perfect ending, it's just enough space to breathe.